Hello, everybody. Welcome to Steve Couper's podcast for aspiring real estate investors. In each episode, we connect with seasoned investors and industry subject matter experts who are eager to share their experiences and tips for success in investing in real estate. So today is a great day. It's a really great day because I'm stoked to introduce my guest for Steve Couper's podcast number 21. Um, he's considered a luminary in real estate investment, education, entrepreneurship, personal and professional development. He's a gifted speaker and a coach. He's dedicated to enriching the lives through personal and professional growth. He's the co-host of Mindset Matters and Everyday Millionaire podcast and CEO of REIN Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you these podcasts in effort to share value. And when it comes to sharing value with real estate investors, this guest is the most generous person I know. It is an honor and a profound pleasure to welcome guest number 21 on Steve Couper's podcast, my friend, the amazing Patrick Francey.
Well, thanks for that introduction. I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Patrick, I know there's so much more to you, but tell me, did I capture what I did say accurately? Is there anything you need to correct me on?
No, nothing to correct you on. And, this many years in business later, we could go on a long time, but I'd rather just get really specific and make it about you and your guests or
Oh,
your
cool.
listeners.
Very cool. Well, Patrick, in the short time that I've known you, I've come to realize that you're an expert in many things. Understanding the market cycle, this seems to be the foundation of REIN, where you guys actually were able to put a template together that helps investors understand where the market's going, especially in Canada. And so if I look at that cycle and I try to understand where we are today, where we are going, and what are the influences that we see external to our climate that we should all be aware of. Share a few thoughts on this. Why don't you tell me what you're thinking right now?
Well, I think there's, from an investor point of view, we have to understand that, to some of the point that you made is where is real estate going? Well, that's a big question because if we generalize and we look at Canadian real estate, which I'm not a big fan of because, real estate is about regional markets and where's real estate going in any particular region, that's a more specific kind of way to look at real estate. So then you say, well, what region? Well, how about what province? How about what city? And then eventually even what neighborhood? And you start to understand that, within each of those geographic kind of regions or locations, there are certainly opportunities that are more beneficial or better. And then there are some that are downright not the right thing to do and they're not the right region. And then we break it down further from that and go, well, what about property type? Does that matter? And then you go, of course it does. So, if somebody says to me, well, what do you think about pre-construction condos in Toronto right now? I hear they're a great deal. My response to that is, yeah, there's probably some great deals, and I think the deals are going to get even better because that particular market is literally melting down. So if you have deep pockets and you can hang on for a long time, one day it'll probably pay off. I wouldn't want to jump in today. Rents are going down in that area as more inventory comes on. But then ultimately, where you are going to win is in the long term because what's happening right now in that market, Steve, and I'll just give you a snippet of an idea of how we start to connect the dots with real estate is that although that market is literally melting down, part of the issue that's going to catch up to us in the future is the fact that they're going to be short units because anything that's coming on stream right now has already been in the pipeline for several years in terms of just where the cycle of building goes in that condo market. But what is happening is that there are no pre-sale condos being sold. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that nothing is coming out of the ground because nobody's going to start a project. They can't start the project without at least 70% pre-sales on most deals. So that is definitely not happening. So there's nothing coming out of the ground. There is no new projects. So that's a kind of an understanding of that, which means that there's going to be some lag, give it 4 or 5 years, and then there's going to be a significant shortage. And so that's kind of how that's looking today. So that's a Toronto market. Vancouver condo market, not great, similar. Now, let's skip over that because there's not much to say about it. It's similar to what's going on in Toronto. Then you look at property type and you go, what isn't being built is detached and semi-detached,
Yeah.
particularly in Ontario and British Columbia. Alberta has got it going on because of this goes back to, just fundamental municipal policy in terms of getting permits and letting projects get done. So big, long-winded kind of answer to open the conversation, Steve, but that's a very, small snippet of a way to look at a market.
Yeah, no, this is very cool. It's insightful, right? In order to, investors can easily find themselves attracted to the eye candy of a sticker price if they're, but as you become educated and as you become more savvy in understanding the market cycle, you can understand if that investment's got any legs under it or not. So it's key. It's right. It's very important.
Well,
Um,
I want to just add one fundamental thing here, Steve, that I don't want to step over. I think it's an important note to make, which is as real estate investors, we're not buying real estate for today. We're buying it today, but we're buying it for the future. And that future is the appreciation, the cash flow, the mortgage buy down, perhaps. If we're buying real estate for today in terms of, well, I want to generate income today, so I'm going to do a BRRRR, I'm going to do a fix and flat flip, or I'm going to do perhaps a rent to own. That's a different game that you're playing based on what's going on. But generally, if we're looking at investment in real estate as a long-term plan, then we have to say, where's the market going? We don't care so much where it's been. We don't even care as much where it is today. Where is it going is a big question we got to ask ourselves. And that's why we break down the economics the way we do.
yeah, no, it's key. It's key. Hey, Patrick, investors are actually on, taking a bad rap from media when it comes to, the reputation of the landlord. And I like the way you phrase it. We provide housing. We're housing providers. And
Mhm.
but if I think about that bad rap and I look back on history, I mean, somewhere in the 1990s, the federal government started pulled out of funding social housing, and they transferred all of the management of that down to the provinces. And ever since then, the management of these issues in social housing has been transferred more to the investor. I mean, it's almost like the governments are expecting us to subsidize affordable housing in various areas, and we're seeing that with political will being imposed on rent caps, and the removal of the Airbnbs and that sort of thing. They're changing policy seemingly without notice, right under our foot to try and serve their agenda, but basically shouldering it on the backs of the investor that's buying these properties and assuming this is going to be a good long-term investment. What are your thoughts on this? Am I out to lunch with that statement? Is there more to it?
Well, I would expand on it a little bit. There's nothing to be wrong about. We're facing what we're facing, but let's break down what it is and say, okay, well, is this a reason to not invest in real estate? It could be. Or is it a reason to invest in real estate? When we start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, we know that any kind of government intervention and rent controls and the way that they, bureaucratically operate, when it comes to landlord tenant boards, wherever. Ontario and BC are primarily the big issues in the country. Montreal's has got it figured out pretty well. They really have parameters to play within, but Quebec in general is like another country in terms of how they operate with real estate sometimes. Having said that, when we look at what's going on in Ontario and BC, the whole government getting involved is politics. The policy is nonsensical from a entrepreneurial point of view or a capitalist point of view. And we know that as soon as the government gets involved, it gets sticky, it gets bureaucratic, it gets expensive. And, the problem that they're trying to solve, which is availability and affordability and actual units in the market, they don't really understand that if they just freed up the market, and here's the thing about how much we know this is politics, they only have to look to Alberta, to Saskatchewan, and to Manitoba, and even to Quebec in terms of what they're doing in general, to see that what they're trying to do in terms of regulations and control doesn't work. In fact, it actually contributes to the shortage of rental housing. So, and affordable rental housing. So it's all to say that as an investor, we have to look at it and go, is that too heavy a lifting? Or do we look at it and say, that's actually where the opportunity is? And yes, it's definitely a pain in the ass. And yes, I have to screen tenants really well. But ultimately, that's why we are going to see real estate continue to increase.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I were to recap your thoughts on that, you feel that markets are much better served if they're allowed to self-regulate than have government imposed restrictions that
Yeah.
rarely hit the mark, right?
Yeah. And that's proven. I mean, that's not even really debatable. And if you could get a politician off the record, that they would probably agree with that. I think sometimes they're just so not savvy or competent in the area of kind of that they may not see it. I think many of them are actually believing what they're pitching, but the reality of it is it doesn't work, and the track record shows that.
It does indeed. Um, in a similar kind of topic, I'm actually, and you touched on it, but with the geopolitical challenges that we're all seeing right now, certainly our government is a little bit strained, our federal government at the moment, and perplexed maybe. We've got some comments coming south of the border that have people quite nervous. Our dollar is below 70 cents US. What do you think? Are we approaching blood on the streets? Is this time for the contrarian investor to get his eyes open and see the opportunity, or should we all sort of sphincter up and get nervous? What do you think?
Well, I think there's a couple things. When we look at politically what's going on and the fact that, our current NDP Liberal government is melting down, is Trudeau going to resign? Ultimately, where's, things heading in that regard? Yeah, I mean, Canada is really in trouble in a lot of ways. And then, of course, you've got a president in Trump who is going to float all that rhetoric out there. I mean, he's talking about, I think, the latest tweet or whatever it was that I saw, or X or whatever the heck they call it these days. Anyways, the point is that he puts it out there, we keep subsidizing Canada $100 million, and, why should we keep doing that? And it's just rhetoric. At $100 million isn't even a rounding error in what they got going on a daily basis, let alone what's happening with, Canada trade. Is it serious? Yes, but it's mostly just rhetoric at this point. There's a lot that Canada brings to the table for the US. And so as much as Trump and his team are going to put it out there, it's just a negotiation. The challenge that we face is we don't have anybody with the wherewithal, short of Danielle Smith in Alberta, to actually sit down and negotiate with the US, knowing that we bring a lot to the table and it's a negotiation. And, at the end of the day, she's earned respect from the US, whereas, the current NDP Liberal government has not, and that's going to be a challenge. And so should we be nervous? Now, having said that background, Steve, I think as business people, as I always look at real estate investors, treat your real estate investing like a business. Whenever there's chaos, whenever there is chaos, there is opportunity. It is a case of us as business owners and investors to step back and go, where is the opportunity? Some of it we can foresee and we can anticipate, but just know that there's going to be good opportunity. And along with it, there's going to be a lot of discomfort through 2025.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting times. Very
Yeah.
Interesting indeed. So you've got a podcast that I think actually brings a lot of value to the table. And one of the topics within this is mindset. And I've come to realize that it's critical to have the right frame of mind as you approach real estate investing in order to actually be able to not be not be turned off by the news and find the opportunity and keep plowing forward when things get tough. But maybe there's more to it, and I'd like to hear your definition or your explanation as to why you think mindset is critical for the real estate investor. Help me understand your thoughts there.
Well, I think that, ultimately we can teach people how to do things because it's all been done before. What we can't help people bust, or we can help people bust through, but you have to set yourself up. Mindset, said another way, is what are you going to set your mind to? And when you're investing in real estate, you've got to set your mind to a number of things, whether that be building relationship, putting a business together, raising capital. These are all things that you have to set your mind to. If you've never done it before, it can be quite intimidating. And so you have to be willing to feel like you're taking some risks, making some mistakes, stretching into perhaps having conversations and creating relationships that you've never had to do before. That all is starting to add up to setting your mind to something and asking yourself the question, how do I have to show up? In other words, it goes back to the quote that, both, we're very familiar with and your listener will be familiar with, which is ultimately, who do we need to become to achieve the end result? And that is always the journey. It's always about self-discovery and figuring out how do we be the best version of ourselves to achieve the outcome that we're looking for.
Brilliant. I love it. Yeah. Um, Coupled with this, then, so you get your head in the right space, you've got a mind set geared to who you need to become. You also, I think, need to make sure that you've got a team. You've established a foundation or a bedrock that's going to actually support you, because it's not a one-man show when you get into this as a serious business. You're needing to leverage people with different skills and specialties and harness them into a team to make sure you're successful. I've seen you talk about this in the past. Maybe you can share a few words about your idea, that pyramid, that foundation for success.
I wish I would have learned this fundamental lesson early on. I've been investing in real estate for almost 25 years, just shy of 25 years. I've been in business for 40 years. And, my ego got in my way. In other words, I thought I had to know it all. I was not willing, or I was too proud perhaps to ask for help. And that was early on, but it did take me a long time to realize that I have not got the capacity to even know or learn at all. This many years later, I don't worry about knowing much, because ultimately I know that, oh, I'll find somebody that knows the answer to whatever problem that I need to solve or the challenge that I've got. So if I don't know something, it doesn't frighten me anymore. It's just a case of, oh, who do I got to talk to figure this out? And that's ultimately was a big stepping stone for me that I had to get through and break through, which was to be a little vulnerable and not know it all and ask the questions like, how do I do that? What should I do here? And when I started doing that, you start to realize that there are some people, number one, that are very good at what they do. Number two, that they love to help and they love to support and they love to share their knowledge and mistakes that they've made so you don't make them too.
No,
And so
wonderful.
that was ultimately it. And then when you build your team, it's understanding that, the difference between investor focused and somebody who's just doing the job. And that's whether it's a realtor, a mortgage broker, an accountant, or a lawyer. There's a fundamental difference between a generalization and a investor focused lead into whatever that particular expertise is.
Yeah, perfect. Couldn't have said it better. So if you were a new investor, or just starting out in year one or two, and you were giving it, you were trying to make sure you were following the right path, then what sort of path, what would your recommendations be to that new investor? How should they approach getting on the right path to success?
Well, there's a number of organizations, of course, as the CEO of the Real Estate Investment Network, we are in the space of education and support of real estate investors. But, where we met was, through Wealth Genius with my good friend Alfonso Quadra, and him and I have been working together and doing a lot of things together to expand on what we bring for an education and an experience for investors. So that's all to say this is surround yourself with like-minded people, individuals who are on a similar journey or path and have an interest in the same things that you have, and that are facing the same challenges, but also experiencing the same kind of wins and acquisition and building portfolio. And that's also what leaves you a little bit inspired and knowing that you're not alone, to And at the end of the day, left to our own device, if we're living in an echo chamber and or out of the basement of our house, dreaming about doing things, it's a lot heavier lifting than putting yourself in the right community in a culture of collaboration. And that's also part of getting your mindset straight because, otherwise you're going to tell yourself stories and all the things that you shouldn't do and why you shouldn't do it. And you're going to get into a room of people who are going, no, we did that. Oh, you can do that too. So it's really important to get that education, but to involve yourself in a community.
I love it. I love it. Okay, I got one last question for you, Patrick, and it's really all about your why.
Mhm.
Um, you and your wife, you're both well off. You're famous, each in your own right, and yet you're still out here, both of you, working hard every day.
Mhm.
You're helping others all the time, and I really appreciate all that you're bringing. Um, but what is it that moves you? Why are you doing this? And what is your goal? Like, well, I've got a goal. I know what that is. What is your goal? And how are you going to know when you get there?
We don't, neither Stephanie and I are big goal setters. And I know that may sound a little odd, but, you know, there was I'll articulate it the way one of my guests on my podcast, The Everyday Millionaire, shared with me when I asked him what success was. And he said, when I wake up in the morning and I take a minute to breathe and close my eyes, and I ask myself the question, am I living my vision?
Yeah.
And if I can say yes to that question, then I consider myself a success. So, for Stephanie and I, we're only looking at not goals, but we're looking at life and lifestyle and where are we being the contribution. So we know our purpose. So for us, we're really clear. Our purpose in all of that we do, in all our and once again in our businesses, is to be a contribution, to be significant, to be able to support others in achieving their goals. And what they say they want for the vision of their life. And so that really is what lights us up. It's what we do. It is in fact who we are. And some people have, said you guys are too generous, and from a critical point of view, you guys, why are you doing this for them, and why are you? And it's because that's what we're wired to do. So a little bit back to what you said is that ultimately we're always operating from the place is this bringing is this moving us forward into what we love to do? And if the answer is yes, then we're going to say yes most of the time. And that's just how we are wired. But our businesses are service businesses. They're businesses where we're supporting others in achieving their goals. And whether that's our retail business, or Stephanie's coaching business and working with athletes, or what I do within the real estate investment network, it's being a contribution. It's supporting others in achieving their goals. And there's a phrase that a good friend of mine and an old coach of ours, Dr. John DeMartini, shared, which was really quite, I don't know, at the time it was profound. It's a pretty common thought now, which is, if your vocation is like a vacation, you'll never work another day in your life. And as hard as Stephanie and I work, and we love what we do. And like everybody, we have tough days and hard days, but there's never a thought, well, I want to quit this. It's like, okay, am I still on track? Am I still doing what I love to do? Those are the questions we ask ourselves.
Gotta love it. Gotta
Does
love
that
it.
answer your question? I don't
Oh, it
know.
does. It does. I mean, I feel this. I feel the same. I love what I do. I
Yeah.
just know that I've got further to go, right? So, what does it look like when I get there? I've got a picture of that for maybe it's the short term, and then what's after that is
And I think too, Steve, is that, that's not altruistic. I mean, if you can do that and bring value and get paid for it, I mean, how much better can life be? And that's really for us, that's what we always try and do.
magic. Plans for Christmas?
Plans for Christmas? Yeah, well, we're heading to the snowy grounds of Edmonton, Alberta, and gonna hang out with family, grandchildren. My mom at 96 is still around. Stephanie's dad at 95 is still around. So, kids and family.
My mother is 96 also.
There you go. So great.
All righty. If people want to reach you, Patrick, how should they go about doing that?
Well, I'm pretty Googleable. P. Francey is kind of where I go on Twitter if you want to see how politically one-sided I can be and annoyed I can get. But I do, LinkedIn is Patrick Francey and Instagram, the Everyday Millionaire, REIN Canada. I'm I'm all over the place.
You're
So
easy to find.
I'm easy to find.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Appreciate having you here.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it very much.